Pretty much nailed it. The way I see it is that like the current fiat monetary system is completely based on interest. From its genesis to its productions to its distribution, every time you have dollars that's created or dollars that are even moved, there's always an interest-bearing loan that's tied to it. Inherently, you can see that fiat is already tied to interest, but what's more important is that not only is interest prohibited in Islamic teachings, it's that even being involved in an interest-based transaction, or even as much as witnessing that transaction, is also prohibited as well. And we see that there is no way to build a genuine Islamic alternative on fiat because all of it is based on interest. So this is why I think Bitcoin, rather than just calling it halal or permissible, I think Bitcoin is the alternative actually to the current riba-based fiat monetary system.
What I think is Bitcoin is the most Islamic form of money that's available today, and it's also the how you understand the money actually, the fiat banking system. Once you understand that, you understand the problems in the fiat banking system, and as when you compare it to the Bitcoin network and how it operates from Islamic perspective, you understand that today, Bitcoin is the best Islamic currency that's available.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's fascinating that the Quran is against riba, and if you count the fiat system causes a great deal of evil. In my opinion, it's maybe the most evil in the world. Most of the things people think are bad in the world, war, even poverty, all kinds of things you can very easily trace back to fiat. So I'm curious what your reaction has been, and all three of our panelists here have spoken to hundreds, if not thousands, of Muslims about exactly this issue. Scholars, people who strongly disagree, people who agree. Tell us a little bit about what countries and what kind of people you've spoken to and what sort of reaction you've had. The scope of the reaction that people have had and your reception when you talk about this, because I know that all of you talk about it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give one good example. There's a charity actually in the UAE, Emirates, one of the largest charities here, and they approached me to get advice and a consultation about how they can accept Bitcoin donations. And it was just discussing, it was primarily just to open the door and facilitate those who have Bitcoin, who want to pay zakat on Bitcoin, or the obligatory charity in Islam, or just donate to a good cause using Bitcoin. And I was explaining to them that Bitcoin has so many properties that is useful specifically for charities. And I gave one example that remittance, sending Bitcoin is borderless. It can be sent anywhere. And because of that, because the cost of sending Bitcoin to someone in front of you is the same as someone across the world, that means that you can bypass a lot of the costs that maybe banks would charge you just sending that money. And the guy was so fascinated, he said to me, that's amazing because we send about 140 dirhams to sponsor an orphan. So they're giving that money to an orphan to give them food or whatnot. And by the time that 150 dirham gets to that orphan, they only get 80. So that means 60 dirhams out of that 140 goes towards some bankers changing hands. And he was saying that with Bitcoin, if you could just recapture 55 out of the 60, that can now sponsor another orphan. So you can actually double the yield, because the yield, as the real generation of yield of Bitcoin, you can actually double the yield of your charitable donation. And his eyes opened up wide. He was so fascinated that basically there's another world out there that you can achieve greater things. And that really fascinated him. So that's just one example I have of when Muslims hear about Bitcoin and what you can do with it, they're like, why are we using fiat?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what jurisdiction that you're in, because if you're talking to Muslims that are in the West, which is where I'm from the US, when I talk to Muslims that, about this Bitcoin thing, I mean, you have to kind of tailor the message to where they're coming from. So, from someone that's in the West, they're probably, they're using fiat, but it's not going to be debasing as much as someone from like Turkey or Lebanon. So you kind of have to adjust that message when you're orange-pilling Muslims, in that depending on where they are, you have to kind of meet them where they're at. So for someone that's in Turkey or Lebanon or even Palestine, when they're using their fiat currency that's debasing at a massive rate, you don't really have to spend too much time explaining the upsides of Bitcoin, especially when you can explain that it's hard and sound money, where it's not going to get debased by some central banker. Whereas from someone that's in the West, you know, they may not have the liberty of saying whatever they want on social media, so they may have their banking services stopped. So when you have Bitcoin, you can talk more freely. You are more sovereign when you have Bitcoin, especially when you custody it and it's not on an exchange. So I think for that context, for the Western Muslim, I feel like it's going to be different compared to a Muslim that's in the Middle East, or for a Muslim that's in the Far East, like in Pakistan or Indonesia. I think the message has to be tailored to where that Muslim is located.
Yeah, you know, Bitcoin is a new industry. It's a new technology. When I speak with scholars in Pakistan, and when we talk about how Bitcoin is better money, they don't understand it, and they don't understand the fiat monetary system as well. One of the scholars I was speaking with, and I told him to come on our Bitcoin Pakistan event and give us a speech. And he said, it's about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is not halal. It's, I cannot come. And I said, who said that? And he said, I follow this Mufti, and he doesn't, praise it. And I sent him the papers of the Muftis, who said this is halal, this is, Sharia compliant and everything. But, it depends on the people's understanding, their mindset. I think we need a lot of education and time to back and forth, speaking with the scholars to get them understand the Bitcoin standard, and that's how it's going to work.
Right. The origins of Bitcoin are very cypherpunk, very libertarian, anarchist. In the early days, it was almost all anarchist and ANCAPs. That's how I found out about it. It was at an anarchist festival. Anarchy and libertarianism are not known for overlapping in Islam. So what do you think about the? There are certainly many aspects of Islam that are very liberty-oriented, such as the right to your home is your castle. Basically, that's recognized in many, many Muslim countries. That's a very libertarian principle. Privacy also is a very libertarian principle. Some of the other things that are known as being libertarian principles are not known as being overlapping with Islam. What are your thoughts on the kind of origins of Bitcoin, the libertarian cypherpunk ANCAP origins, and how that fits with Bitcoin and how it fits with Islam?
So yeah, the origins of Bitcoin. I think if you look at, I think some of the it's kind of weird because it seems to be almost a funny thing when you quote the Stoshi's white paper. People say, "Oh, Stoshi never got everything right," but he got a lot of things right. And in terms of the properties of Bitcoin, and that's what I really find fascinating about Bitcoin, is that Satoshi could have arranged Bitcoin in so many different ways, but the way he did do it fits so perfectly with, I would say, the natural disposition or the fitra, or what is naturally assumed as being a fair system. Just looking at the issue of the issuance, how do you get the coin? Modeling it similar to the idea of mining, whereby the only way you get it is actually work for it. I would say that's the core of fairness, and that is one of the underpinning principles of Islamic law, of fairness, adl. That you don't just issue value and give to your friends and your kin. If you earn something, you deserve the thing. That's what gives you the right to own the thing. And that's probably one of the overlaps, I would say, with libertarianism. I guess we say, in the sense that property rights are tied to exactly that. What gives you the right to own the thing? And if you have the right to own the thing, others have no right to remove that from your possession. And I think that's one of the overlaps that Bitcoin has in that regards, and so some of the things that enshrines within the ethos of Islam.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of Muslims, when they encounter Bitcoin, especially from its cypherpunk aspects, they can kind of get, a little bit skeptical, because they kind of see like that kind of anarchist ANCAP leaning, and they might recoil at the thought of Bitcoin. They might recoil at the thought of a Muslim being sovereign over their wealth. And I think there's actually a lot of similarities between the cypherpunk ethos and a lot of Islamic principles. I mean, think about it. If you are someone that owns more stuff, it increases your capacity to do more good. And if this increases your capacity to do more good, you get more good deeds. You are worshiping Allah even more. You know, I think as Muslims, we should strive to be more sovereign, especially in the digital space. And I feel like the cypherpunk ethos provides a good grounding for us as Muslims to take, and even take that to another level that's inspired more by Islamic teachings. And I think this Bitcoin, adopting Bitcoin, it's not good enough for me that Bitcoin is just halal. Like, I feel like Muslims need to take custody of their Bitcoin, they need to build on Bitcoin, and they need to do it in a very toxic, anti-riba way, so that they are completely disengaging from the current fiat monetary system with a cypherpunk ethos where they are not only going to do it in a permissionless and in a permissionless way, but also in a private way, so that the stuff that they own is not being surveilled, it's not being watched by mega corporations and governments, that they are truly sovereign over their wealth, which I think would allow the Muslim to live more in accordance with the teachings of Islam.
Islam focuses on the freedom principles, and the Bitcoin is freedom money. For example, in Pakistan, Bitcoin solves a lot of problems. We have a remittances problem, we have the savings problem. In Pakistan, not just in Pakistan, Muslims around the world, they save money. Not just as compared to the Western countries, people spend more than they make. They go to into the debt. But in Muslims, especially in Pakistan, everyone who's even their wages are very low, they save money, and they save in fear, and they have no idea their money is being stolen from them. If they save in Bitcoin, they will get rewarded. So those are the benefits that you get, when you start, using Bitcoin and start living your life on a Bitcoin standard. Use Bitcoin and that's.
Cool. To your point earlier about some countries, you sort of have to meet people where they are. Each of you have spoken about this in many different countries. What do you think is the countries that are most accepting, and maybe what are the ones that might have I don't want to pick on anybody, but which ones might have more challenge in accepting this, and maybe talk a little bit also about you. I didn't ask you to do the intro, so maybe talk a little bit about yourselves and what you've done in talking about this in different places in the world, and what your reaction's been.
I mean, I would say specifically in the region here, the countries that have been on the forefront in, I would say, adopting Bitcoin or considering Bitcoin as a valuable asset, or the valuable currency, or what you want to call it. I would say 3 countries have kind of led the way. One of them has been Bahrain. That's been a country that, in terms of regulation, they've been very early in terms of opening the doors for companies to do business. That's been known. UAE specifically as well, most recently has been led the charge ahead. I guess UAE being smallish in its size, very nimble, very easy to maneuver. So they've adopted Bitcoin and now exploring different avenues in which they can use Bitcoin in industry. And I guess also Oman, in terms of it builds infrastructure in mining. Now, not to say that other countries are not also interested. Other countries have also showed an interest, but been a bit more cautious. I think that's generally understandable. And I've always been the general stance of caution. A lot of sometimes, and it's not maybe, I'm not sure if it's a defense, maybe, but some of the negative vibes some have given towards Bitcoin have sometimes stemmed from the aspect of caution. This is a new asset, it could be a scam, it could be there to steal your money, so they've kind of taken a very offish stance with it. But they're slowly seeing that it's now been over a decade now. How long have we had Bitcoin since 2009? We're way beyond the stage of being a scam. So now people say, okay, there's some avenue here, there's some option here for us for the constituents to benefit from it. I think that's generally what's happening. I think others will speak about other regions.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think it just depends on the audience that you're talking to in a Muslim country. So like for a country like the UAE, you can clearly see that there's a lot more institutional interest and adoption for Bitcoin. But in some place like, Pakistan or something, there might be more retail interest in trying to adopt Bitcoin. So I think it just depends. So like, in a country like Palestine, like I said earlier, you have people that are living under an oppressive fiat monetary regime. A lot of people don't know this, but the Palestinians use the Israeli shekel. They are literally using the currency of their oppressors, and that's devaluing way faster than other more traditional fiat currencies. But for explaining Bitcoin to a Palestinian or someone that's from Lebanon or even Turkey, you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining it because their fiat system is already like broken enough for them to actually feel it. So you don't actually have to explain to them that much for a Palestinian. For example, for me personally, my family is from Palestine in the Beit Lahem region, and like I don't send them PayPal or Western Union. I literally send my family Bitcoin because I don't have to explain to them that much why they need to use Bitcoin. They already get it. When you're talking to someone that is in UAE or maybe Saudi Arabia or something, you have to use a different approach because you don't want to you don't want people to adopt Bitcoin in a very antagonistic way. So institutional adoption might work in these places better. For the Western Muslim that lives in the US or the UK, it's an active boycott, right? You hear of these Muslims in especially Western countries that are involved in the BDS movement where they're boycotting McDonald's and Starbucks and all this stuff. But like, what about the current fiat monetary system that's causing all of these injustices all over the world? Bitcoin is the boycott for the fiat monetary system. That is where the Muslim can start like fighting back against that oppressive system.
I think developing countries and Muslim developing countries actually are going to play a very important role in the in next coming years because we have the waves of Bitcoin adoption in the past. Early days, some tech enthusiasts, techies adopted Bitcoin, and then private businesses, and then we recently had some retail adoption in 2017, and then the institution came in, and then the banking, and now the governments. What's remaining is the Muslims adoption. And I think it's coming in next 5 years when a lot of Muslims are gonna start understanding Bitcoin, and they're gonna accept Bitcoin. And I come from Pakistan, and I would say Pakistan is going to play a very important role in the adoption and in the Muslim community. How Bitcoin can play a role in the Muslims and in their lives, how it can improve their lifestyle. Pakistan government, didn't talk about Bitcoin 1 year ago. And when I go to people and talk about Bitcoin, and they were very afraid of talking about it. Don't talk about it; it's illegal and stuff like that. But now the government is talking about it. They, said, we're gonna set up Bitcoin reserves and we're gonna regulate the industry. And now the people's mental shift, it's changed. And now I, talk about Bitcoin with anyone, and they say, "Oh, whoa, tell us more about it. How we can use it? How we can, adopt it." So it's happening, and within the next 4 or 5 years, I think Muslims around the world, they are gonna accept Bitcoin. They are gonna get on the Bitcoin standard very rapidly.
So you also talk to a lot of non-Muslims, and like libertarianism, not everybody associates Islam and Bitcoin. What's your reaction been from non-Muslims that you've talked to? Has it been any form of sort of Islamic outreach, or what's the reaction when you talk to non-Muslims? And you mentioned that you're an Islamic Bitcoiner.
I mean, that's a very interesting question actually, because I've done many lectures about Islam or the intersection between Islam and Bitcoin. And I approached it from the aspect of the fundamental principles of how Bitcoin functions and how it's in line with Islam's stance towards fairness and justice. And the response I've always received from everyone is of agreement. As in they said, oh, you basically expressed what I've always felt. I've always felt that, even what we said earlier on, that everyone fundamentally knows from the fiat system that something's not right. Some of us benefit from the fiat system, so therefore there's less incentive to change that, but fundamentally we all recognize that at some level there's something wrong with the system. But on the flip side, when people look at how Bitcoin functions, how you get Bitcoin through mining or through purchasing, or the self-sovereign nature of it, the ability that you spend it when you want to, this fits perfectly in line with what we say the fit or the natural disposition of a person. That when you explain to them this is in line with what Islam encourages. Islam encourages you to have ownership of your property, that no one has rights to remove it from you, that you decide how you spend and how you dispense of that asset, and other sorts of elements, specifically in terms of the anti-riba or the evil nature of interest, whereby the person who owns money essentially takes advantage of those who don't have money and profits from their position. They fundamentally agree that this is such a fair system. Then usually say to them, why don't you become Muslim then? But then that's not a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting whenever I talk about the intersection of Islam and Bitcoin, and whenever non-Muslims are listening in, like Muaawiyah said, I mean, you find that non-Muslims actually are in agreement with what Islamic finance is trying to do. Rather than just trying to offload the risk completely on the customer, it just makes more sense. It's more ethical when you have that risk being shared between investors, rather than it just being something where, you know, someone is giving out a loan and they are just getting interest without putting any of the work or without taking any of the risk. So I mean, you find with a lot of the cracks in the fiat system that are starting to appear, I feel like you're starting to see a lot of non-Muslims that are actually in agreement with the prohibition of interest. It kind of intuitively makes sense, like why religions, not just Islam, but other religions as well, would prohibit interest. There's like there's a logical thought that's put into that prohibition, actually, and it's actually really great to see, because I get a lot of good questions from non-Muslims that are very interested in this aspect, when especially in the context of the intersection between Islamic finance and Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter, you know, what anyone thinks about it. You know, Bitcoin is a technology, and that works on your understanding. You know, for example, I'm a Muslim and I say Bitcoin is halal money because, you know, I look at that way. But for non-Muslims, they, see it as a technology that solves their problems, their payment problems, their savings problems, their banking problems. So it depends on your level of understanding, how you see the Bitcoin network and as a technology, or, you know, as a halal money. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, this has been a great panel. Well, you know, whether you're Muslim or not, I think everybody should find this topic fascinating.